Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. If you've been here before, then you know, of course, we have to start every episode with a wildlife wild fact. And today we are talking about nudibranches. And if that word sounds a little familiar, you're right, because it actually means nude gills. And nudibranches are the exact example of diversity, coming in all shapes and sizes, from 1/4 of an inch up to 20 inches. There are over 3,000 species that comes in all sorts of colors and patterns. They really are some of the most underappreciated and most beautiful creatures in the entire ocean. To learn more about nudibranches, check out the links in the description below. So today we are doing LEETCODE problem number 841, called Keys and Rooms. It is a medium level LEETCODE problem. Let's get to it. The question says, there are n rooms and you start in room 0. Each room has a distinct number in 0, 1, 2, up until n-1. And each room may have some keys to access the next room. It also might not have any keys in it at all. Formally, each room I, so at each index of the array, has a list of keys, rooms at I. And each key, rooms at I at j, is an integer in 0, 1, up to n-1 as well, where n is the room's dot length, or the length of the room's array. And a key, rooms at I at j, is equal to v, opens the room with number v. So that is to say, at every index of this room's array, there is another room which is represented by its own array, which may or may not have other numbers in it. And each of those numbers are a key that correspond to another index, which is a room that is for that particular key. Initially, all rooms start locked, except for room 0, which is where we start. You can walk back and forth between rooms freely, that's good to know, and we return true if and only if you can enter every room. So, for example, in our first input here, we are given an array of 4 rooms. In room 0, we have a key to room 1, and we can pick up that key and go to room 1, which is index 1 of the room's array. From there, we pick up the key to room 2, and we can go into index 2 of the room's array, where we find the key 3, which will take us to index 3, which happens to be an empty array. There are no more keys in this room's array, but by now we've visited all of the rooms in the array. So we return true at the end. In the second problem they give us, we start in room 0 and we have keys 1 and 3. So we can visit rooms 1 and room 3. However, neither of those rooms contain the key to room 2. So room 2 is sitting here still locked, and we can't enter room 2. Therefore, we would return false for this example. Now, to start off, if I look at the note on the bottom, I see that the rooms.length, the length of the room's array, can be between 1 and 1,000. So that tells me that it's possible to find a room that is only of length 1. And if rooms.length is in fact equal to 1, then we can automatically return true, because we know that we start off in room 0, and if that room 0 is the only room in the array, then we've already visited it. However, after we've gone through that first edge case and we know that we now have more than one room and we don't have a length for the first array, so if rooms at 0 is empty, but there are other rooms in this rooms array, we can now return false because we know even though there are other rooms to visit, there are no keys for us to use in the first room, so we can't actually go anywhere from there. So we have to return false. And next, we actually start this problem. So the first thing I want to do is create a set. And a set in JavaScript is going to allow me to store only unique values. So I'm going to call this set visited because it's going to store all of the rooms that I have visited so far. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is add in a 0 because we're starting in room 0, therefore we've visited it already. Next, I'm going to create a queue. And this queue is going to hold in it the array that is represented by room 0. So that is rooms at index 0. And if you don't remember what a queue is going to be first in, first out. Or in other words, I'm going to represent it as an array, which it is already starting off as, and you push into this array and then shift off the front. Therefore, whatever you push in first is also going to be the first item off of the front of this array. And now we can go while this queue has any length, because we're going to start by saying our room that we are currently working with is going to equal queue.shift. So what this is going to do is take a key out of our queue, and that key is going to represent a particular index or another room in our rooms array that we can now visit. And from here, what I want to do is take note of whether or not we have visited this room. If we have already visited this room, so if visited.has this particular room, we are actually going to just continue this while loop, and we're not going to do any other calculations because we've already visited this room, so we don't need any more keys from it. If we haven't visited this room already, we are going to add this room to the visited set. Next, I'm going to create a counter I, and I want to go while this I is less than the length of the room array. That is to say, that we are going to go, for instance, in this second example, from room 0 to room 1. And while I is less than the length of the array at room 1, we are going to do something. What is that something? Well, we are going to push into our queue that particular room's keys. Once we've taken every key from that particular room and put it in our queue, all we have to do is increment I as we go through. And then we know that by the end of this loop, we will have taken every key out of the room and pushed it into our queue, so that in the next iteration of our outer while loop, I will take another key and go to that room. And we keep going and going until all of the possible rooms have been visited with the keys that we have access to. So all that's left after this is to return at the end. We want to make sure that our visited size, the size of our visited set, is equal to rooms dot length. That is to say that we have as many rooms in our visited set that there are rooms in the length of our input array rooms. I just said rooms a lot of times. We're going to go through an example after this. But first, we run the code, and of course we submit the code. Cool. There you go. Why don't we run through an example? Let's take this first example here. Example 1, I'm going to put that right here. Now, the first thing we do in our set, which I will put here as well, is add in the number 0 because we start off at room 0. Now, our queue is going to look something a little bit like this to start. It's going to be an array, and it's an array because rooms at index 0 is this array right here, which is just an array of length 1 with a 1 inside of it. And so room is going to equal 1 at the moment because we shift off the queue. Now the queue is currently empty, but that's okay for now. If visited.has room, well, it doesn't yet. We're going to add room 1 into our set, and we're going to go while I is less than rooms at room.length and add every key into our queue. So that is, as we go through rooms at 1, we take that 2 and add it into our queue. And then we go back into our while loop, another iteration, and we pop off that 2, and 2 has not been added to our set yet, so we add 2 to our set. We also go through room number 2, and we find that it has a 3 in it, and so that 3 gets put into our queue, and then that 3 gets shifted off the front of the queue, and we go through and add 3 to our set, and then go through room 3 in our rooms array, but there's nothing in there. So we hit this condition one last time, and the queue has no length to it. There's nothing in there. So we break out of our while loop, and we check to make sure that our visited.size, which is 4, equals 4, because our rooms.length from our original input was also 4. And so we can return true. And that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching my channel. Once again, if you want to learn more about Nudibranches, don't hesitate to ask. Comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.